This pile of old bricks and grease at least makes us money, my daughter-in-law says, handing a thick envelope to my future son-in-law. The sound of paper crumpling cuts through the hum of the kitchen. At least the old man's good for something, she laughs. If we depended on those two, we'd be ruined. All they know is standing over a stove. I'm hidden inside the pantry, among sacks of flour and spices, holding my breath. My chest tightens. The world tilts. I can't see them, but I can hear everything. The rustle of clothes, the muffled laugh, the sound of a kiss. I swallow hard, my throat dry. Outside, through the small window, the neon sign of Casa Maria flickers, half-lit, trembling, as if the soul of the place were dying with me. I was never a man of many words. Numbers made more sense to me. Numbers don't lie, and food, like life, is just a balance between what you add and what you lose. Maria used to say that cooking was math with a heartbeat. She was the heartbeat, I was the math. Together, we built something that tasted like love. When we opened the first Casa Maria in San Antonio, we had nothing but her recipes and my stubbornness. Maria Elena Davis, born in Monterrey, raised in the chaos of a big Mexican family, could turn any kitchen into a home. People didn't just come for her food, they came for her laughter, for the way she called everyone mi corazón as she served enchiladas hot from the pan. After she died, the silence inside the restaurant became unbearable. Every sound, the clatter of pans, the sizzle of oil, felt like a ghost calling her name. I promised her, standing alone in that kitchen, that I'd keep the place alive. "Don't let them turn love into business," she had whispered to me from her hospital bed. I didn't know what she meant then. Now I do. My children, David and Isabella, grew up running between the tables, chasing each other around the chairs while Maria cooked. David inherited her hands, gentle, precise. Isabella, her fire. When she smiles, I swear I see Maria again. They both loved this place, at least I thought they did. Years passed and the restaurant grew. We opened a second location near the Riverwalk. Same recipes, same spirit. People called us old-fashioned, but that was exactly the point. No shortcuts, no frozen anything, just family, faith, and flavor. Then came the pressure, from suppliers, from younger chefs, and eventually from inside the family. It started with my daughter-in-law. She joined after marrying David, bright, confident, ambitious. I thought she'd bring new energy. Instead, she brought impatience. "Benjamin," she said one night, "we need to modernize. Trendy names, faster service, Instagram presence." I nodded, half listening, while she scrolled through her phone. She never noticed that I still kept Maria's apron hanging in the corner, untouched. Then Isabella got engaged. Her fiancé was charming in that polished, rehearsed way, always complimenting me, calling me sir, shaking my hand a little too firmly. He said he believed in family, in tradition. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did. The changes came slowly, almost invisible at first. A different supplier here, a delayed delivery there. One morning, I noticed the chilies didn't taste the same. Dull, less heat, less soul. "They're cheaper," my daughter-in-law said with a shrug. "Nobody will notice." But they did. Our regulars started asking questions. Complaints appeared on Yelp. I stayed up nights reviewing invoices, numbers that didn't add up. Then came the whispers about a new restaurant opening nearby, Nuevo Sol. A modern Mexican concept, people said. Neon lights, fusion plates, cocktails with names I couldn't pronounce. I didn't care at first. Competition is normal. But something about the timing, the same vendors, the same style, made me uneasy. I began checking the security cameras more often, not out of suspicion but habit. I'd watch the staff cleaning up after hours, my family locking the doors. But one night, I caught sight of something I couldn't explain. An unfamiliar car parked behind the restaurant long after closing. Then another. I told myself it was nothing. Still, the feeling lingered, a sour taste I couldn't wash away. I started noticing more. My daughter-in-law avoiding my eyes, whispering to Isabella's fiancé, Laughter that stopped when I entered the room. A phone call cut short when I walked by. I told myself I was imagining it, that grief makes ghosts out of shadows. Then the bills arrived. 2 new accounts under the restaurant's name, payments I hadn't authorized. I called the bank, thinking it was a clerical error. It wasn't. Someone had access to our records, to my passwords. That night, I stayed late, sitting alone at the corner table where Maria and I used to plan our weekends. I ran my hand along the wood, worn smooth by decades of plates and stories. Outside, the Texas wind carried the smell of rain and roasted corn from the street vendors. It smelled like home and loss. I looked at the framed photo on the wall, Maria in her apron, smiling as if she knew everything would one day break. I whispered, "You warned me, didn't you?" The neon sign outside flickered again, half-lit, trembling. I didn't know it yet, but the rot had already set in. Not in the food, not in the business, but inside the people I trusted most. Family is supposed to be simple. Or maybe that's what I used to believe. When Maria was alive, everything had rhythm. She woke before sunrise, humming old boleros while grinding chilies by hand. I'd watch her from the doorway, half in love, half in awe. Even the way she stirred a pot seemed to heal the world. Sundays were sacred. We'd close the restaurant early, invite friends, neighbors, anyone who smelled the tortillas from down the block. The kids would dance barefoot on the warm tile, their laughter mixing with the scent of cilantro and roasted peppers. Those were the kind of days that made you forget death existed. After she passed, that rhythm vanished. David stopped talking for weeks, locking himself in the prep kitchen, cooking until dawn. Isabella became quiet, her smile forced. I tried to keep the family together, but grief has a way of changing the flavor of everything, even love. David's wife joined soon after, all sharp edges and bright ideas. At first, she treated me with respect, calling me Mr. Davis, pretending to admire the old ways. But I could see her eyes scanning the place like a realtor inspecting property. She talked about trends, influencers, and rebranding. The word itself tasted like rust on my tongue. "Your father means well," she'd tell David, "but the world's moving forward. Maybe it's time we do too." David would nod, always trying to keep peace. He loved her. I can't blame him for that. Love makes you blind, just like it did with me once. Isabella's fiancé was another story. Smooth talker, always arriving late, but with a smile that disarmed everyone. He said the right things, about unity, innovation, legacy. The kind of man who knew how to charm a room but never stayed long enough to clean up after the party. I should have seen it. Maria would have. One night, Isabella found me sitting outside, the restaurant lights dimmed. She sat beside me, silent for a long time before saying, "You still talk to her, don't you?" I smiled. "Every day. She'd be proud of you," she said. I didn't answer. Pride wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted her hand back on mine, her voice calling me mi amor after another long shift. Sometimes when I walk through the kitchen, I still smell her perfume, faint, like sugar and smoke. I stop for a moment, close my eyes, and it's as if time folds in on itself. But then the noise of the modern world cuts in. The clatter of phones, the endless notifications, the laughter of people who don't understand what it took to build this place from nothing. The staff began to change too, younger, faster, less loyal. They listened to my daughter-in-law more than to me. "She knows what's trending," they'd say. I tried to stay patient, but every new improvement felt like another piece of Maria being erased. They replaced the clay plates she loved with sleek square ones, swapped the hand-painted menu for a digital tablet. The soul was leaving the room, and no one noticed except me. One afternoon, I found David arguing with her in the back room. He didn't see me there. "She's your father," he said, frustrated. "You can't just push him aside." "I'm not," she snapped back, "but we can't cling to nostalgia forever." Do you want to die serving tacos to old tourists? Because I don't." Her words cut deeper than she knew. Maria used to call our food stories on a plate. Now it was just tacos to old tourists. That night, I drove out to the edge of town, to the hill where Maria and I used to watch the city lights. I brought a small plate of her favorite dish, mole poblano, and left it there like an offering. "They're changing everything," I whispered, "but I'll protect what's ours, I promise." The wind moved softly through the mesquite trees. For a moment, I almost believed she was listening. When I returned, the restaurant was still glowing faintly, the neon flickering against the windows. Inside, laughter echoed from the kitchen, young voices, careless. I wanted to believe it was just life moving on, but something about the tone made my stomach tighten. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Maria would tell me to forgive, to trust. But in my gut, I felt the first crack, the beginning of something cruel hiding beneath all that ambition and charm. That was the night I started keeping the cameras on after closing. I used to think betrayal had a sound, the slam of a door, the crash of a plate, something loud enough to warn you. But it doesn't. It comes quiet, disguised as routine. At first, it was just mistakes. Orders missing ingredients, invoices arriving late, cash drawers not adding up. I told myself it was fatigue. Everyone was working too hard. I blamed the new POS system, the new staff, even myself. Anything but them. Then the food started tasting wrong. I couldn't explain it. It looked the same, smelled the same, but something essential was missing. It was sterile, empty, like a song played without feeling. One afternoon, I walked into the storage room and found half the imported spices replaced with cheaper brands. "They're the same," my daughter-in-law said, not even looking up from her phone. "Customers don't care, they just want fast service." She smiled when she said it, that kind of smile that hides sharp edges. David tried to defend her. "She's just trying to help, Dad. Times are changing. Some things aren't supposed to change," I told him. He sighed, tired of the same argument. Then one night I caught the dishwasher throwing away trays of perfectly good tortillas. "She told me to," he said, nervous. "Said they were too old school looking." I stood there, speechless, staring at the trash can. My wife used to spend hours perfecting the texture of those tortillas. They weren't food, they were her language. The next day, I noticed a new brand of flour stacked in the back labeled Nuevo Sol Suppliers. The name hit me like a cold wave. "Who ordered this?" I asked. My daughter-in-law raised an eyebrow. "It's cheaper, and it's part of our new partnership." "Partnership?" She shrugged. "You'll see, it's exciting." I didn't press her. I was too afraid of what I might find. Later that week, a health inspector showed up unexpectedly. Someone had reported unsanitary conditions at Casa Maria. I knew immediately it was planted. The timing, the tone. But how could I prove it? The inspector left with nothing to report, but the damage was done. Rumors started spreading online. I saw her and the fiancé whispering by the bar after closing, their voices low, their laughter too familiar. When they noticed me, they stopped. "Just planning the new menu," he said with that polished grin. I nodded, pretending to believe him. But in my chest, something began to harden. Still, I tried to hold on to hope. I told myself they were family. Maria would want me to forgive, to guide, not accuse. But faith without truth is just blindness. A few nights later, I stayed late again, reviewing the security footage. Nothing suspicious at first, until I saw it. The two of them walking through the back door after hours, carrying boxes. I paused the video, zoomed in. The boxes had Nuevo Sol printed on the side. They weren't even hiding it. The next morning I confronted my daughter-in-law gently. "Were you here last night?" She blinked, then smiled. "Of course. We were taking inventory." "With the door locked?" "Safety reasons," she said, turning away. The way she said it, calm, bored, chilled me more than if she had screamed. That evening I sat with David outside the restaurant. He looked worn down, his hands stained with sauce, his eyes heavy. "You don't trust her," he said quietly. "I don't trust what I don't understand," I answered. He rubbed his face. "She's trying to grow the business. Maybe you should let her." "And if growth means losing who we are?" He didn't reply. A week later, one of our oldest suppliers called. "Benjamin," he said, "I need to confirm the address for the new order. You're opening a new location, right?" "Nuevo Sol?" I froze. "Excuse me?" He hesitated. "Well, I got a request under your name." "Same logo, just updated." That's when the world tilted. My hands shook as I hung up. I walked to the window, staring out at the street, at the sign flickering weakly, fighting the dark. They were building something behind my back, using my recipes, my suppliers, my legacy. That night I couldn't sleep. I went through every folder, every email, every receipt. There it was, small payments redirected, subtle transfers, little thefts that together formed a monster. When the first permit papers arrived by mail, stamped with Nuevo Sol LLC, I felt the blood drain from my face. The address listed wasn't far, just 6 blocks down. My wife once told me that betrayal doesn't destroy you all at once. It's slow, like water leaking through the ceiling, until everything you built caves in. I realized then that the ceiling had already started to crack. The hardest part about betrayal isn't the act itself. It's pretending you don't see it. Every day I walked into the restaurant and smiled like nothing was wrong. The customers didn't know that the walls were cracking, that every corner held a lie. I still greeted them with, "Welcome to Casa Maria," even as my voice trembled. But the staff noticed. People always do. Anna, our oldest waitress, approached me one morning. She'd worked with Maria since the first day. She could read me like a book. "You haven't been sleeping, Mr. Benjamin," she said softly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I lied. She placed a hand on my arm. "Then why are you watching your family like they're strangers?" I didn't answer. That afternoon, I saw the fiancé, Mark, walking through the dining area, clipboard in hand, giving orders as if he owned the place. He stopped beside a new poster design on the wall, "The Future of Mexican Cuisine." The logo was unfamiliar, sleek, cold, soulless. "Who approved this?" I asked. He smiled, adjusting his tie. "It's a test concept, branding exercise. Don't worry, Benjamin, we're just exploring ideas." Exploring ideas. That's what people say before they take everything from you. Later that day, Anna found me in the office, going through receipts. She hesitated before handing me a folded note. "You didn't get this from me," she whispered. It was a printed email between my daughter-in-law and a design firm in Austin. Subject line, Nuevo Sol, menu draft and branding package. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere. That night I drove past the construction site that everyone in the neighborhood had been talking about, the one with the bright new sign. The metal framework was almost complete. In the window a banner read, "Opening soon, Nuevo Sol, a modern Mexican experience." I parked across the street, watching workers unload kitchen equipment that looked exactly like ours. My chest burned. When I got home, I found a voicemail from my bank. Another loan inquiry had been made under my business number. Someone was trying to leverage the Casa Maria accounts to fund the new place. I wanted to storm into their homes, demand answers. But Maria's voice lingered in my mind, calm, patient. "Anger blinds. Wait until you see the whole picture." So I waited. The waiting turned into obsession. I started keeping a small notebook, every irregularity, every missing dollar, every time they came in late or left early. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit in the empty dining room and imagine Maria sitting across from me. "What would you do?" I'd ask the shadows. "How do you fight the people you love?" The only answer was silence, and the faint smell of her perfume still clinging to the curtains. Weeks passed. Isabella grew distant, caught between loyalty and confusion. David was exhausted. His marriage crumbling under pressure he didn't understand. He looked like a man drowning quietly. "Dad," he said one morning, "maybe it's time you step back. Let us handle things for a while." I stared at him. "Handle what?" "The business. You've done enough." The words cut deeper than any knife. Done enough. Maria and I had built this from scratch. The sweat, the debt, the love. And now I was being told to rest like an old relic. That night I stayed after closing again. I checked the cameras. All quiet. Then, on a whim, I turned on the microphone feed. That's when I heard them. Faint voices in the kitchen, laughter, glasses clinking. It was them. I didn't move, just listened. "He still has no idea," my daughter-in-law's voice said. "He thinks we're doing inventory." Mark laughed. "By the time he realizes Nuevo Sol will be open and will be untouchable." My stomach turned. I muted the screen and leaned back in my chair, the room spinning. The next day, Anna noticed my silence. "You found what you were looking for, didn't you?" I nodded. "More than I wanted." She looked at me for a long moment. "Then do something before they take everything." Maria wouldn't stay quiet. That night I opened the safe and took out the original contracts, the deeds, the financial records, everything with my signature. I hadn't touched them in years. The paper smelled like dust and memory. For the first time in months, I felt something close to control. I didn't know yet how I'd use them, but I knew this. The moment would come. And when it did, they would finally see the man they thought was too old, too soft, too sentimental to fight back. I closed the safe. The metal door echoed through the empty room. Outside, the wind rattled the flickering sign, a heartbeat in the dark. The night it all broke open didn't arrive with thunder. It came quietly, like the soft click of a lock turning on a door that used to be mine. I was in the office, the screens split into quarters, each a pale eye staring into a different corner of the restaurant. Midnight. The staff had gone home. Only the hum of the refrigerators and the restlessness inside my chest kept me company. I turned on the mic feed out of habit, and there they were, my daughter-in-law's laugh, low and mean, his voice, Mark, slick as oil. "Count it again," she said, and I watched her step into view. Hair pulled back, phone on the counter, a thick envelope between her fingers. He kissed her. I didn't need to see the kiss to feel it. The sound carried a soft, arrogant punctuation mark in a sentence I hadn't finished reading. "Tomorrow, I'll cancel the tasting with Isabella," he said. "No point pretending anymore." "Good," she answered. "And after the opening, we'll offer David a package to step down. He can play house chef while we scale. Benjamin, he'll sign or we'll force it. He's tired." "He's done," Mark said. "He just doesn't know it." I don't remember standing. I remember the chair scraping the floor and my hand on the door frame as if I needed proof the world hadn't gone liquid under my feet. I saved the footage, copied it to a drive, printed the bank statements, the emails, the vendor switches. I put everything in a folder that used to hold my marriage license. Then I walked into the kitchen and turned on the lights. They froze when they saw me, like children caught stealing from a church. "Let go of each other," I said, "and put the money down." My daughter-in-law's eyes hardened first, quicker than his. "Benjamin," she said, smiling without warmth, "you shouldn't be here." "This is my kitchen," I said. "Correction," Mark replied, that grin spreading. "This is a business, and businesses evolve." I laid the folder on the stainless steel table. "You've evolved yourselves out of this family." They didn't touch the folder. Of course they didn't. Guilt never reaches for paper. It reaches for excuses. "You think you can run this place forever?" she snapped. "You think your dead wife's recipes are going to save you from reality?" My mouth went dry. "Don't speak her name." "Why?" she said, stepping closer. "Because the legend of Maria keeps everyone obedient. Grow up, Benjamin. The world doesn't care about your ghosts." "Maybe not," I said, "but the world still cares about theft." I pointed to the cameras, watched the color drain from his face a shade. "Audio," I added, "crystal clear." Silence, the kind that makes you hear your own pulse. She recovered first. "You won't do anything," she said. "You'll protect your image. You'll protect your children. You're weak." "You've mistaken patience for weakness," I said softly. "That's on you." They left together. He didn't look back. She did, only to smirk. By morning, the war had uniforms. I arrived to find the locks changed at the second location. A young manager I barely knew stood at the door, arms crossed, rehearsed lines ready. "New policy," he said. "All operations go through Isabella and David's teams now." "My name is on the lease," I answered, "and on the deeds." He shrugged. "I just work here." Inside, the staff shifted, uncertain. Some looked away. Anna met my eyes and held them, steady as a prayer. "Come to the main store," she whispered. "We'll figure it out there." When I reached the original Casa Maria, a sheriff's deputy was waiting with a stack of papers. "Temporary restraining order," he said, almost apologetically. "Allegations of harassment and interference with business." "Whose business?" I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The stamp on the top read like a joke told too loudly, "Nuevo Sol, LLC. "They can't bar me from my own restaurant," I said. He shifted his weight. "You're not barred from the premises, sir, but you are barred from contacting the petitioners and from altering any assets pending review. Judge'll sort it out next week." I took the papers. The words blurred and then sharpened again like a camera fighting for focus. Across the street, a delivery truck idled, "Nuevo Sol Suppliers," painted on its side in the same sterile font I now hated like a taste I couldn't spit out. By noon, the rumors had hatched. Online posts accusing us of stealing recipes, my recipes, of mistreating staff, of outdated practices unsafe for modern dining. Anonymous accounts multiplied like roaches. I traced one to a marketing firm in Austin, the same name from that branding email. I called the number. The woman on the line said, "Sir, our client's confidentiality," and I hung up before the sentence finished staining my ear. The family meeting happened that evening, not because anyone called it, but because gravity pulled us into the same room. David came with his wife, tight-lipped, tired. Isabella arrived late, eyes swollen, engagement ring absent. Mark drifted in last, a shadow wearing cologne. We sat at a table meant for birthdays and baptisms. It felt like an autopsy. "I know," I began. "What you've done. I have the footage. I have the transfers. I have the contracts you forged under my business ID." David flinched. He looked at her, his wife, not me. She kept her gaze steady, a knife pretending to be a spoon. "You're confused," she said. "We made executive decisions to keep the brand alive. You should be thanking us." "Brand?" I asked. "This is a home." "It was," Mark said. "Now it's a product, and we're the only ones who know how to sell it." Isabella's voice cracked. "You were sleeping with her," she said to him, words landing like plates breaking. "In our kitchen." He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He simply tilted his head as if she were the one being unreasonable. "It wasn't working between us," he replied. "This is better for everyone." "Everyone?" I asked. "Or just the two of you?" He leaned in. "Benjamin, you need to accept reality. Investors want vision, not sentiment. We already secured funding based on a unified portfolio using your numbers. If you cooperate, you'll get a generous payout and a ceremonial title. If you don't—" "If I don't," I said. "We'll litigate," my daughter-in-law finished. "We'll argue incompetence, your age, your grief, the decline in standards under your watch. I have emails, Benjamin. I have witnesses willing to testify." "Do you have a soul?" Anna asked from the doorway. I hadn't realized she was there. She stood like a sentinel, apron on, hands folded, eyes bright with the kind of anger that keeps people alive. "Stay out of this," my daughter-in-law snapped. "She is in this," I said. "We all are." I turned to David, my son who once fell asleep in the flour bins, who cried when a batch of tortillas burned because he hated wasting food. "Look at me, mijo." He did. Barely. "You know what this place is. You know who your mother was. You know what Maria taught us about love." He swallowed. "Dad, I can't lose everything. There's debt, there's pressure," she said. "She says a lot of things," I answered. "What do you say?" He closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked older than me. "I say, I don't know." That was the worst part, not the betrayal, the cowardice of not choosing. They served me papers the next morning. She filed for divorce from David and demanded an immediate valuation of marital business assets, including a share of Casa Maria. He, Mark, sent an email cancelling the wedding with Isabella. No explanations, just bullet points. Irreconcilable differences, professional incompatibility, moving forward with separate ventures. He CC'd me. He CC'd people from the investor group. He CC'd the world. Isabella didn't come to work for 3 days. On the 4th, she appeared, hair tied back, eyes empty. She didn't speak to him. She didn't speak to her brother's wife. She washed dishes for hours, sleeves rolled up, scalding water biting her skin. I tried to pull her away. She shook her head and kept scrubbing. By the end of the week, the second location reported inventory losses I knew were siphoned off. The bank froze one of our lines, pending the restraining order hearing. Vendors called nervous. A delivery meant for us arrived at Nuevo Sol by routing error. The sign outside our original store flickered so weakly that by night it looked like a dying firefly. "This is how they erase you," Anna said, carrying a tray past me, "not by burning the place down, by turning off one light at a time." I stood behind the counter as a couple came in, tourists with maps and curiosity. "We heard there was drama," the woman said as she placed her order. "Is it true you stole the menu from the new place?" I smiled. "The menu from the new place came from my wife's hands," I said, "and her hands came from heaven." She looked embarrassed. They paid, they ate, they left quickly, like people afraid to be caught in the wrong church. The night before the hearing, I took Maria's apron off the hook for the first time since she died. I laid it flat on the table, smoothing the worn cotton with my palms. It smelled faintly of cumin and smoke, and something I can only call prayer. "I failed," I told her. "I let wolves into our home." My voice broke. "I don't know if I can win." Of course she didn't answer, but the quiet felt less cruel. The next morning I ironed a shirt, shaved carefully, put the folder in a battered briefcase that once carried our first-day receipts. I arrived at the courthouse early. They arrived late, well-dressed, confident. Their lawyer smiled as if he were ordering brunch. The judge looked like a man who'd seen every kind of ruin. He asked for order. He asked for patience. He asked for truth. Their lawyer spoke first about growth, about modernization, about my emotional instability, and the danger of nostalgic management. He used words like fiduciary responsibility and brand dilution, as if we were talking about shampoo. When it was my turn, I didn't give a speech. I handed the bailiff the drive with the camera footage. I handed the clerk the bank statements. I handed the judge the original deeds with my signature, the operating agreements, the clauses about unilateral changes requiring my consent. A hush. The judge watched a snippet of the video, the kiss, the envelope, the phrase that still burned my ears. "The old man is good for something." He cleared his throat. "We'll hold the temporary order," he said, neutral. "This court expects a full accounting from all parties and an immediate freeze on transfers unrelated to daily operations." Outside, on the courthouse steps, their lawyer adjusted his cufflinks. "You won't keep this up," he told me quietly. "You'll get tired." "I've been tired since the day Maria died," I said, "and I'm still standing." He smirked. "For now." I walked away. Not because I had won anything I hadn't, but because I understood something I hadn't before. This was the rupture. The point where the bridge breaks and the river decides who can swim. That evening, I stood in the dining room while the neon sign outside flickered like a heartbeat about to flatline. David hovered near the kitchen door, unsure of which direction was home. Isabella chopped onions like penance. Anna refilled water glasses for a half-empty room. I rang the service bell once, the way Maria used to call us to attention. "This is still our house," I told them. "They've taken pieces, but not the soul." No one applauded. No music swelled. The only response was the hiss of the grill and the soft clink of knives against wood. But something small and stubborn refused to die. Then the power dipped. The sign outside blinked off completely, and for a breath the room was dark. I heard my own voice in that darkness, steady and low. "We're not done." When the lights returned, they were dimmer. The room looked older. But so was I. And old things, when they don't break, harden into something you can build on. They had stripped me of trust, of ease, of the illusion that family is a guarantee. They had not stripped me of will, and that, I knew, was the one ingredient they hadn't accounted for. There's a kind of silence that only exists after everything collapses. It isn't peace. It's the echo of something that used to have a pulse. The day after the hearing, the restaurant was almost empty. Only 2 tables occupied, both regulars. People who came less for the food and more out of loyalty to memory. They didn't ask questions. They just ate in quiet solidarity. I thanked them with hands that shook. David stopped coming by altogether. His lawyer told him to avoid conflicts of interest. Isabella tried to keep the place running, but she was a ghost behind the counter, mechanical, hollow-eyed. When she smiled at customers, it looked like it hurt. News spread fast. Blogs, gossip sites, culinary forums, all talking about the scandal. Family feud in San Antonio's Mexican dining scene. Chef accused of embezzlement and abuse. They didn't use my name, but they didn't need to. Everyone knew. When I went to the market, people avoided my gaze. Some pitied me, others looked amused, like I was a tragic character in a telenovela they could discuss over breakfast. The cashier hesitated to take my money, like guilt was contagious. Bills piled up. Suppliers wanted deposits up front. The bank reduced our credit line again. Every letter in the mail looked heavier than it should. At night, I sat in the empty dining room, listening to the hum of the freezer and the ticking of the neon outside. Sometimes I'd imagine Maria sitting across from me, her elbow on the table, that half smile she used when she caught me brooding. "Benjamin," she'd say, "stop counting the losses. Start counting the reasons to fight." But reasons were harder to find than ever. Anna tried to keep me fed, bringing leftovers, coffee, tamales from her sister's kitchen. "Eat, viejo," she'd say. "Revenge runs cold on an empty stomach." She was the only one who could make me laugh, even if it came out broken. One night, I walked past Nuevo Sol. The grand opening had already happened, lights blazing, valet parking, a line around the block. Their logo glowed bright, golden, perfect. Through the glass, I could see them, Mark and my former daughter-in-law, shaking hands, smiling for cameras, playing the role of culinary visionaries. I watched as a reporter handed them a microphone. Mark said, "We represent the new face of Mexican cuisine, innovation built on tradition." Tradition, the word tasted like ash. I turned away before I did something stupid. At home, the loneliness felt like another skin. The walls seemed to breathe, the air too still. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maria's hands stained with sauce, her voice whispering, "Love them even when they fail you." But what happens when the people you love turn that love into a weapon? Days blurred. The restaurant barely broke even. Isabella wanted to quit, to run away. "It's too much, Dad," she said, tears streaking her face. "They've poisoned everything, even our name." "Our name," I said quietly, "was never about them. It was about your mother." "She's gone," she whispered. "Then it's our job to make sure she's not forgotten." She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe me. By the end of the month, I sold my truck to pay the staff. Anna refused to take her salary. "You'll pay me when the tables are full again," she said. "I've waited through worse storms." But even her faith began to tremble. Then came the power outage. We lost refrigeration overnight. I threw away half our inventory the next morning. Watching good food go into the dumpster felt like burying parts of Maria again. Each thud echoed in my ribs. I sat on the curb behind the restaurant, head in my hands. The city noises blurred into a low hum. Cars, laughter, wind, nothing that belonged to me anymore. That's when an old man I barely knew, a homeless regular named Luis, who used to collect bottles behind the restaurant, sat down beside me. He handed me a small paper cup of coffee, the kind you buy for $1 at a gas station. "You look worse than me today," he said with a grin. I chuckled weakly. "You might be right." "You still have your place," he said. "That's something." I looked at the dark windows of Casa Maria. "It doesn't feel like mine anymore." "Then make it yours again," he said. "People forget how simple that is." Simple. I wanted to believe that. When he left, I stayed there for hours. The sun rose, painting the walls with gold that didn't belong to me. Inside, I cleaned the tables alone, polished the glasses, straightened the chairs. Every sound echoed too loudly. When I turned on the lights, half of them flickered, as if the building itself was tired of hoping. That's when I realized this was what rock bottom felt like. Not rage, not even despair, just quiet surrender. But surrender isn't the same as defeat. It's a breath before something else. I looked around at the empty seats, at Maria's photo hanging crooked on the wall. I whispered, "If you still believe in me, give me a sign." And maybe it was coincidence, or madness, or mercy, but at that exact moment, the neon outside flickered once, twice, and then glowed steady, a heartbeat. I stood there for a long time, staring at the light, letting it burn against the dark. Maybe I wasn't finished after all. The morning after the neon steadied, I brewed a pot of coffee so strong it could have stripped paint. I poured a cup for Maria's photo, another for me, and unlocked the front door at sunrise. The air smelled like dust and possibility. I don't know which was heavier. At 8, Anna walked in, eyebrows raised. "You look different." "I slept," I lied. What I'd done was decide. We opened with no music, just the sizzle of onions and the soft scrape of knives against cutting boards. I pulled out Maria's old recipe cards, the ones smudged with sauce and thumbprints. No more shortcuts, no more cheap spices. I wrote our vendors and told them we were done with whatever partnerships had snuck in. If I had to pay cash, I would. If I had to grind chilies by hand like Maria used to, I would. By noon, 3 tables filled, then 4. Small victories feel bigger when you've been counting losses. A young couple sat near the window, whispering as they scrolled on their phones. I braced myself for another rumor. Instead, the woman looked up and asked, "Excuse me, is Maria the Maria?" She pointed to the photograph. I nodded. "My wife." "My abuela cooked like her," the woman said, voice tight. "We came because someone posted about you, said you're bringing back the original menu." "Who posted that?" I asked. "Some guy on Instagram," she said. "Is Street Fiancé. He does food reviews." When they left, I searched the account on our old tablet. It was all neon signs and tacos on paper boats, food trucks parked under freeway bridges. And there we were, Casa Maria, photographed in kind light. The caption read, "When a place feeds your spirit, not just your stomach." Old school at its best. No PR, no gimmicks, just love and fire. He told people to skip the drama and show up hungry. I don't know why it hit me so hard. Maybe because someone I'd never met recognized what we were trying to save. At 2, a man in a baseball cap appeared at the counter. "I'm Luis's friend," he said, "the guy who collects bottles. He told me you needed help." I blinked. What kind of help? He lifted his cap. I weld. Your sign bracket is cracked. I can fix it for a plate. I stared at him, then laughed. Deal! Out front, sparks flew like tiny stars as he strengthened the metal heart holding our name. People slowed as they passed. A few came in. Ina gave the welder a plate of enchiladas, the color of sunsets. At 3, Isabella arrived, eyes swollen but steady. She washed her hands, tied her hair back and said, "Put me on the stove." "You don't have to. Put me on the stove, Dad." I did. She cooked like a storm breaking over dry land, controlled, fierce, necessary. The first plate she sent out tasted like a promise. Between orders, I pulled out the old ledger and started a list. Title, what we still own. 1, our name. 2, our recipes. 3, our story. 4, the sign. 5, the people who still believe. I added a 6th, time. Maybe not much, but enough to act. "Dad," Isabella said, sliding a plate onto the pass. "I talked to a friend who works PR for a community center. She says we don't need to clap back at the rumors. We need to tell our story, our way. Is that social media?" She smirked. "It's testimony, with pictures." She photographed the recipe cards, the burn marks on the old griddle, Maria's apron folded on a chair. She wrote the first post by hand before typing it out, and she read it to me aloud. "We are not trending. We are a family kitchen built by a woman whose laughter fed this city. If you eat with us, you're part of that family. We won't be louder than the lies. We'll be warmer than them." I swallowed. "Post it." She did. Within an hour, comments appeared. Regulars, neighbors, strangers. Some angry on our behalf, some grateful. Someone asked if we could host a memorial night for Maria's recipes. Another asked if we ever teach kids how to make tortillas. "Classes," Anna said, "Sunday mornings before church." "I'm not a teacher," I started. "Liar," she said, and walked away, smiling. At 5, a delivery arrived from a farmer I hadn't worked with in years. "Heard you're going back to real ingredients," he said, unloading crates of poblanos and fresh corn. "Pay me when you can." "That's not how business works," I said. "Then call it a loan from Maria." He tipped his hat and left before I could argue. At 6, we filled every table for the first time in weeks. The room sounded alive again, spoons clinking, soft laughter, the hissing song of the pan. A college kid asked if she could record me while I explained the mole. Her eyes shone like she was collecting stars. Halfway through the rush, the power dipped. My gut seized. Another outage. The lights blinked twice, then steadied. The new bracket on the sign held firm. Through the window, I saw the welder grinning from the curb, thumbs up raised like a blessing. I nodded back, fingers tight around the ladle. At closing, Isabella brought out 2 plates and set one across from me. "Eat with me," she said. We ate in silence, the good kind. After a minute, she looked up. I broke it off with Mark. "I'm sorry." "I'm not." The muscle in her jaw relaxed. He wanted the spotlight. He can have it. I want the fire. I reached for her hand. We sat like that until the plates were empty and the room was just the ghost of dinner. When she left, I stayed behind with the ledger. I added another line, 7, the right to refuse shame. The phone rang once, twice. I almost let it go to voicemail. On the 3rd ring, I answered, "Mr. Davis." A woman's voice, hesitant, kind. "My name's Valerie. I run programming for the San Antonio Food and Culture Festival." My stomach tightened. Their playground now. I saw posts about Casa Maria. We were planning to invite Nuevo Sol for a feature, but would you consider participating in a head-to-head tasting instead? Blind judging. Proceeds go to the community center. I leaned back, eyes on Maria's photo. "We don't do stunts," I said. "It's not a stunt," she replied. "It's a table. You deserve a seat." I thought of the rumors, of our empty afternoons, of the way the room sounded when every chair was taken. I thought of Anna's faith and the welder's sparks and Luis's dollar coffee. I thought of Isabella's hands steady over the flame. When? I asked. 3 weeks. Send me the details. After I hung up, fear arrived right on schedule, loud as a marching band, blind judging, public stakes, their cameras, our heart. I cleaned the counters until they shone. I scrubbed the floor on my knees like a man paying for his sins. Then I pulled Maria's apron off the chair and tied it around my waist. "Teach me again," I said to the empty room. "One more time." I chalked a list on the back wall where only the kitchen could see it. Grind by hand, stock from bones, salt with patience, fire low, love high, feed the neighbors first. Before I left, I stepped outside and looked up at the sign. The night was clean and wry, Texas stars unfolding like secrets. The letters glowed steady over the sidewalk. Across town, Nuevo Sol burned bright like a new sun. Let it. New suns burn out too. I locked the door and walked home with a steady ache and a small, stubborn hope sitting warm in my chest. The turn had started. Not with trumpets, with hands, with heat, with memory. The invitation sat on the counter for 3 days before I touched it again. The festival logo, bright oranges and reds, looked like a warning more than a celebration. Head-to-head tasting, tradition versus innovation. I hated the word versus. Maria never believed food was a fight. But this wasn't about flavor anymore. It was about truth. Isabella couldn't sit still. "We need a menu that sings, Dad. Not a replica of the old one." "Our version is the old one," I said. She smiled gently. "Then let's remind them what that means." For 3 weeks, we cooked like soldiers preparing for battle. Every day began before dawn and ended with burnt fingers and aching backs. Anna handled the front, her laugh echoing through the walls like a good omen. Local kids showed up to help. Some were from the new Sunday classes. They chopped onions, made tortillas, posted photos of their messy aprons. The internet noticed again. Picture Casa Maria lives started appearing beneath every picture. The pressure came just as fast. Reporters called, pretending to care, but really digging for a quote they could twist. "Mr. Davis, will you reconcile with your former partners if you win?" "I'm not cooking to win," I said. "I'm cooking to remember." That never made it into print. At night I tested sauces, each one a prayer disguised as flavor. Mole that tasted like dusk, tamales folded tight like promises. Sometimes I burned a batch, cursed out loud, then laughed at myself. Maria would have thrown a spoon at me. "Too hot," she'd say. "You can't rush love." One afternoon the door opened and David walked in. I hadn't seen him in weeks. He looked thinner, eyes ringed with guilt. "I came to help," he said. "You came to spy?" I asked before I could stop myself. He shook his head. "They're not who I thought they were. The investors cut me out the moment the scandal hit. I don't have anywhere else to go." Anna crossed her arms. "You still got a knife hand? Prove it." He did. Quietly, humbly, he chopped onions until the tears that fell weren't just from the sting. The 3 of us cooked side by side, me, Isabella, David, like old times. For the first time since Maria's death, the kitchen sounded right. I caught myself humming one of her boleros. Isabella joined in. David followed, off-key but sincere. The moment stitched something in me that had been ripped for too long. The night before the festival, I couldn't sleep. I sat outside the restaurant, watching the traffic thin, the sign glow steady. Luis appeared, bottle bag slung over his shoulder. "Heard you're going up against the shiny place," he said. "You scared?" "Terrified." "Good," he grinned. "Means it matters." He pulled a small medal from his pocket, tarnished but clean. "Found this behind the dumpster months ago. Thought it was luck. Now I think it's yours." It was Maria's Saint pendant, the one she used to wear during long shifts. My throat closed. "Where did you—" He shrugged. "She wanted me to give it back. Maybe." I clasped it tight, the metal warm from his hand. Thank you. Make it count, viejo. He left before I could answer. Back inside, I placed the pendant above the stove. The light from the flame flickered across its surface like a heartbeat. Anna whispered, "Tomorrow's not about them. It's about her." I nodded. It always was. Morning came like a drumbeat. Trucks lined the streets near the Riverwalk, tents unfolding, banners snapping in the wind. The smell of roasted corn and grilled meat hung in the air, every chef's dream and nightmare. We unloaded our crates quietly, while cameras flashed around Nuevo Sol's glittering booth. Their stand looked like a nightclub, glass, chrome, sponsorships. Ours looked like a kitchen, old wood, clay plates, and a photograph of Maria front and center. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Welcome to the San Antonio Food and Culture Festival. Today we celebrate the spirit of community, flavor, and innovation." Always that word. Mark and my former daughter-in-law waved to the crowd like royalty. She wore white, spotless, the kind of white that only exists when someone else does the cleaning. When her eyes found me across the field, she smiled like the devil remembering an old debt. Isabella whispered, "Don't look at them." "I'm not," I said. "I'm looking at her apron." The judges approached, clipboards ready, cameras rolled. "Chefs," the host said, "you have 2 hours. That's all it would take to see whether tradition still had a heartbeat." As I tied Maria's apron around my waist, I felt the metal shift beneath the fabric. The heat of the flame met my skin. My hands stopped shaking. I wasn't the man who watched betrayal on a screen anymore. I was the man she built from love and flour and fire. The horn sounded like a starter pistol. 2 hours. I set the pan on the flame and let the metal warm until it sang. Isabella worked the comal, pressing tortillas in a steady rhythm, thump, hiss, lift, like a heartbeat holding the day together. David seasoned the stock, face calm, hands sure. For a moment, we were just a family kitchen again. Across the aisle, Nuevo Sol exploded with spectacle. Smoke guns, neon aprons, a DJ spinning music too loud for the food to be heard. Cameras swarmed them, hungry for shine. Hours drifted past us, slower, curious. They weren't sure old wood could still burn. Eyes on the fire, I told myself, not on the noise. We built the menu like a prayer. Mole poblano, the color of midnight, ground by hand until the chocolate and chilies ceased to fight. Cochinita, that surrendered to the fork without losing its dignity. Tortillas warm enough to be held like a hand that never left. A runner stopped, sniffed the air and closed his eyes. "Smells like my grandmother's kitchen," he said. He wasn't talking to the camera. He was talking to memory. Behind me, Isabella whispered, "They're plating foams." "Let them float," I said. "We'll stand." Halfway in, a judge in a linen shirt wandered near our station, pretending to be just another passerby. He watched the way we turned the tortillas, the way David tasted the broth, the way I wiped the rim of the plate with the side of my thumb. He said nothing. He nodded once and moved on. It steadied me more than applause. Mark made his way over, microphone clipped to his collar, smile sharp enough to slice fruit. "Benjamin," he said, loud enough for the nearest camera, "ready to retire after today?" I didn't look up. "Ready to eat?" He leaned in. "By the way, nice family reunion. Pity it didn't happen sooner." Isabella's shoulders flinched. My hand hovered over the salt. I put the salt down. 2 hours, I said. Use yours." He left with a shrug that made the crowd laugh. It was a small laugh, the kind people regret. The first tasting bell rang. Dishes went out under simple white domes, with numbers printed on cards. No names, no stories, just flavor. I watched our plates leave like small boats sent into weather. Minutes stretched. The MC's voice rose and fell across the tents. I caught flashes of reactions in the judges' faces, an eyebrow lifting, a mouth softening, the slow, involuntary nod of someone who forgot to pretend. I felt Maria's pendant warm against my chest, like a hand through fabric. The second bell. Another round. We plated tamales tight as secrets, streaked the mole with the back of a spoon, pressed a final tortilla and tucked it beneath, as if covering a child who'd fallen asleep on the couch. When the last dish left our table, there was nothing to do but clean. That's the cruelest part of service. Your fate walks away from you, and your hands are left with soap and cloth. The crowd gathered near the stage, a restless sea. Nuevo Sol's booth pulsed with light, investors in crisp shirts gripping paper cups and certainty. Our little corner smelled like cumin and hope. Chef Benjamin Davis, the host called, and the team of... He glanced at a cue card. "Station 7, please come forward." We did. I could feel the wood of the stage through my soles, the mic stand cold where my fingers brushed it. Mark and my former daughter-in-law stood 10 feet to our right, radiant. Her lipstick was war paint. He adjusted his cuffs like a man who'd already framed his victory. The head judge stepped forward, face unreadable. "We tasted 2 visions of Mexican cuisine today," he said. "One bright and polished, one quiet and grounded. We judged blindly, we spoke slowly, we argued." His mouth lifted, then settled. "And then we stopped arguing." The crowd hushed into itself. "The winner of today's head-to-head tasting is Station 7. The words hit like rain after a long fire. Sound ripped up from the crowd. Cheers, whistles, a chant starting and stumbling into laughter. I didn't jump, I didn't pump a fist. I closed my eyes and saw Maria at the stove, turning to me with that half-smile that meant, "Told you, now keep going." Isabella grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. David's shoulders fell as if someone had set down a weight he'd been carrying for months. Anna whooped from the front row, apron tied over her Sunday best. I heard Luis somewhere to my left. "Eso!" The host waved us toward the microphones. "Chef, how does it feel?" "Hungry," I said, and the crowd laughed, the good kind of laugh. "And grateful. This food belongs to a woman named Maria. I just didn't want her to be forgotten." A pause, then applause that didn't feel like for a brand, for a person. The host pivoted to them. "Nuevo Sol, anything to say?" Mark smiled like a man climbing a crumbling wall. "We congratulate Station 7. Innovation is a conversation. We welcome every voice." My daughter-in-law leaned into the mic. "We respect tradition, but the market—" I lifted my hand. "No," I said quietly, "not today." My voice carried in that strange way truth sometimes does. "This isn't about markets. It's about the theft of a family's heart." Gasps, then the loud kind of silence. The host blinked. "Sir, let's keep—" I nodded to Valerie, the festival organizer, waiting just off stage. She had the envelope I'd given her at call time, a thumb drive, a few printed pages. She stepped forward like a stagehand delivering a prop, but the object she placed into the head judge's hands was heavier than any prop I'd ever held. "Please play the video," I said, "and then I'll be quiet." The big screen behind us flickered to life. Grainy at first, then cruelly clear, the kitchen at night. Her laugh, his voice, the envelope, the kiss, brief, ugly, undeniable. Words that had branded themselves into my skull now spilled into the speakers. "At least the old man is good for something. If we depended on those two, we'd be ruined. Time to kill the ghost of Maria." A ripple moved through the crowd like a shiver in water. I didn't look at them. I looked at the audience, at faces turning, eyes narrowing, mouths tightening into lines. You can feel a room decide. It decided then. The second slide, bank transfers, vendor switches, branding invoices addressed to Nuevo Sol LLC on dates that matched our supply shortages. The final image, a permit application bearing my business ID. A man in a blazer near the front, one of their investors, pulled out his phone, brows collapsing. Another investor whispered something sharp to a woman in a black dress. She stepped backward, as if distance could clear the smell of smoke. The judge lifted a hand. The screen went dark. The only light came from the sun, and from our old sign, visible between the tent tops in the distance, steady as a watchful eye. The host swallowed. We did not expect. That's what betrayal is, I said. Unexpected by those who trust. Mark stepped forward, color gone from his cheeks. This is an ambush, he said to the judge. We have counsel. We have... You had a kitchen, I answered, and you buried it under lies. My former daughter-in-law searched the crowd for a lifeline and found none. She reached for the mic, missed, found it, and forced a smile that trembled. This is a personal matter, she said. It has nothing to do with cuisine. A teenage boy near the stage shouted, "Cuisine is personal," and the crowd, God bless them, cheered like he'd solved something adults had complicated to death. Valerie leaned in to whisper to the host. He nodded, then addressed the crowd. In light of everything, the festival board is suspending Nuevo Sol's feature slot pending review. Donations from today will go to the community kitchen program at Casa Maria. He looked to me. If you'll accept. My throat locked. I managed a nod. The sound that came up from the field wasn't just approval. It was relief, the communal kind. The investors began to evaporate, their exit polished, practiced. One stopped in front of me, hand out. "Mr. Davis," he said stiffly, "our firm takes reputational risks seriously. We'll be terminating our agreement with..." He glanced past me. "These parties." I didn't take his hand. "Feed your interns," I said. "Pay your vendors on time." He flushed and moved on. Mark tried one more time, voice low, a snake turned small. "You don't have to finish us." "I'm not," I said. "You did." I turned to Isabella, to David. "We're going home." We stepped off the stage to a corridor of hands, some clapping, some reaching, some simply pressed to hearts. A woman in her 60s touched my sleeve and whispered, "Your wife fed us through hard years." An old man nodded, as if he'd been waiting to pass a baton. I felt more tired than I'd been in months. I felt less alone. Back at our booth, we packed slowly. The medal, still warm, went back around my neck. The sun slipped lower, softening the edges of everything. The crowd thinned into families with leftovers, couples with sunburned noses, kids sticky with palettas. Life resumed its ordinary miracle. As we loaded the last crate, a city inspector approached, a younger man with the posture of someone who still believed rules mattered. "Mr. Davis," he said, "we received multiple anonymous tips about discrepancies at Nuevo Sol. After what we saw today, we'll be conducting a full audit. If there's cause, there will be closures." He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't need to. Justice isn't always an apology. Sometimes it's paperwork filed properly. We walked past Nuevo Sol's booth. The DJ had vanished. The chrome looked dull in the honest light of late afternoon. My former daughter-in-law stood stiff, arms folded over a white dress that now looked like a uniform for a job that no longer existed. Mark stared at his phone like it had betrayed him too. He lifted his head as we passed. I waited for rage, for triumph, for something ugly to bloom in me. Nothing did, only a clean edge of sadness, wasted talent, misplaced hunger, a fire set in the wrong house. "Benjamin," he said. "Please." I paused. "Find a kitchen you can be honest in," I told him. "Then cook." We left them there, blinking under a sun that had stopped pretending to be new. By the time we reached Casa Maria, the sky was the same deep blue as our mole. Neighbors stood outside as if waiting for a parade. Someone had hung papel picado across the doorway. The sign hummed steadily, the bracket shining where the welder's hands had left their bright stitches. Inside, we laid the trophy. Simple wood, a small metal plate, beneath Maria's photograph. Anna lit a candle. Isabella set one tortilla on a plate and placed it beside the flame like an offering, the way her mother used to for the saints. I finally let my body sag into a chair. The room smelled like cumin and citrus and the kind of sweat that makes labor holy. David sat across from me, eyes red. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know," I answered. "Now be better." He nodded the way men nod when they're not boys anymore. A knock at the door. When I opened it, Luis stood there, cap in hand, grin wide. "Told you," he said, stepping into the warm light. "The shiny places burn out." I laughed, a sound that rose from somewhere I hadn't visited in a long time. "Come eat," I said. "It tastes better when you win." He shook his head. "It tastes better when you're home." We filled the tables with the leftovers from the day, a feast thrown together from refuse and victory. People ate, people forgave, people remembered. Outside, traffic sighed, the sign kept humming. The candle by the photo burned steady and small, like a promise kept. I washed the last dish myself. Water ran warm over my hands. The medal cooled against my chest. I looked at the room and saw it as it was. Not perfect, not new, not saved forever. Alive. When I turned off the lights, the dark didn't feel like loss. It felt like rest. The following week, the air in San Antonio felt different. Not lighter, just cleaner, like a storm had finally wrung itself dry. Casa Maria stayed open from sunrise to midnight, not because we were rich in customers, but because people kept coming just to talk. Some came with memories, others with apologies. A retired teacher brought a photo of her and Maria from the first year we opened. "She made me love cooking again," she said. A young couple arrived with a box of handmade candles. "We don't have money, but we wanted to say thank you." Someone dropped off flowers at the door every morning. No note, just marigolds. The health inspector who once shut us down came by for lunch. "Guess I owe you a real review," he said, cheeks red. He ordered mole and cried halfway through. "My grandma used to make this," he whispered. "Exactly like this." Anna teased him until he laughed through the tears. Even David found his rhythm again. He worked quietly, head down, sleeves rolled. He didn't talk much about the past. Sometimes that's what repentance looks like. Steady work and silence. Isabella, on the other hand, became the face of the restaurant without meaning to. Her energy filled the place, the way Maria's once did. Customers asked for her by name. She always pointed to the photo on the wall and said, "That's the real chef." As for me, I found peace in the mornings. I'd unlock the door, breathe in the smell of flour and warm wood, and light the candle beneath Maria's picture. "Buenos dias, mi amor," I'd whisper, and somehow the day would start right. Nuevo Sol shut down within the month. The audit confirmed everything. Mark disappeared into another city. She filed bankruptcy and left town. People asked me if I felt satisfied. I told them satisfaction is quiet. It doesn't gloat, it just breathes. Justice doesn't erase scars, it makes them stop bleeding. The festival sent us a framed certificate and a donation receipt for the community kitchen. We hung it beside the menu, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Kids from the neighborhood started showing up on weekends to help peel corn and learn how to cook. Some burned their first tortillas, some made perfect ones. All of them left smelling like home. One afternoon, as the light slanted golden across the dining room, a TV crew arrived unannounced. "We're doing a segment on resilience," the reporter said. I almost turned them away, but Isabella put her hand on my shoulder. "Mom would have liked people to see the fire," she said. They filmed quietly, respectful, no scripts, just shots of hands kneading dough, Anna laughing, David tasting sauce. At the end, they asked me to say something for the camera, something about legacy. I looked into the lens and thought of Maria, of every night I'd sat alone believing the story was over. Then I said, "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you keep alive." When the segment aired, we got letters from other small business owners. People who'd lost partners, families, hope. Some wrote from far away, "You reminded me why I started." I didn't have answers for them, just a truth I'd earned the hard way. Pain can feed you if you cook it slow. Months later, the festival invited us again, this time as guests of honor. We almost said no. But then Isabella smiled and said, "Let's show them what staying looks like." We brought Anna, the kids from the Sunday classes, and even Luis, who insisted on wearing a tie over his t-shirt. The announcer introduced us simply as the Heart of San Antonio. I could almost hear Maria laughing somewhere above the crowd. When I walked on stage, the sun was setting the same way it had the day we won. I took out the Saint's medal, rubbed it between my fingers and whispered, "You can rest now, querida. They remember you." After the ceremony, we drove back to the restaurant. The night was warm, the sign humming steady. A breeze carried the smell of grilled corn from somewhere down the block. For once, I didn't feel like an old man fighting time. I felt like a man keeping time. Inside, Isabella poured us each a glass of red wine. "To Mom," she said. "To Maria," I echoed. We clinked glasses. The flame by her photo flickered and steadied again, like it always did, as if she were breathing with us. I stepped outside for a moment, looking at the street, the stars, the people passing by. The city pulsed around me, alive and imperfect, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like it was leaving me behind. I put my hands in my pockets, feeling the shape of the medal, and smiled. Some stories don't end with victory, they end with peace. And that's enough. At dawn, Casa Maria's lights glow again. Benjamin hums softly as the first tortilla rises. If this story moved you, subscribe. More tales of love, loss, and redemption await.